What's up, bros? What's up? Now, let me see here, dudes. Maybe our internet be better this morning. It was terrible last night, and we just turned this one over and got this Hanover. Oh, as you can see, we got the big H. It's rig. Well, my favorite of the super ships. That's my first super ship, my dudes, and yeah. So really, really happy with it. We're gonna have to save to buy some stuff for it, you know. So, like, definitely. Okay? So, now. Easiest way to make cash, bros. Easiest way to make cash. That's right there. So, but just saying, bros, you know. Try to check us out a little bit of news this morning and see what's going on, you know. A little iffy, a little icky, sticky dicky. Yeah. You know what I'm saying, bruh? So, while we play a little bit here, we need to, all right, bro.
Pandemic shutdowns, a worldwide sell-off starting here and into overseas markets. Trillions of market value wiped out as Wall Street warns the U.S. is heading into a recession, possibly. We had a surprise.
I've said that all along, bros.
For July, just 114,000 jobs. That pushed the NASDAQ into a correction. Let's welcome to the show former presidential candidate, the former governor of Arkansas, Mike Huckabee. Governor, great to have you on again. Sir, you've run for office. The timing of this, a possible recession hitting the 2024 race. Do you trust Kamala Harris to handle a presidency, to handle a recession?
I don't trust her to handle a press conference, which is 12 days.
Oh, God,
This
yeah.
is a person who's going to have to run a record that she helped create called Bidenomics. It's really working out great for the American people. Every cost they have has gone up so dramatically that people are trying to take turns having dinner at the family table. And getting a tank of gas requires selling a kidney. Bidenomics is a failure, and all we need to do is forget about her origin or ethnicity. All that stuff is nonsense. What we need to talk about is the policy, not the personalities, not the party. We need to talk about policy. That's what Americans care about, because that's what's hitting them right in the gut.
Yeah, there are zero policy positions on her campaign website. You know, but by the way, your point's well taken, Governor, because we looked at the math. It's something like 300 million people are either in the middle class or working class. They're feeling like they are in a recession. We got Wall Street pros like top economist Mohamed El-Arian, also the FT. Politico, they're now warning the U.S. is likely heading into a downturn. So does Kamala Harris own this downturn if we're heading into a recession? Because she's now trying to blame Trump when he has not been in office for 4 years.
Yeah, that's got to be one of the craziest things. It's almost like blaming an airline crash today on the Hindenburg disaster. I mean, this is insane. How anybody would take her seriously when she tries to blame Donald Trump for the current economy when he hadn't been in office in almost 4 years. I mean, my gosh, that's giving him a lot of credit for power that I bet he didn't even know he had.
Interesting. Yes, he's got interesting power that he could affect things, the economy 4 years later without making policy, hitting it. Okay, so let's talk about this. You know, we checked her speeches, we checked her campaign ads. Kamala Harris is not campaigning on Bidenomics. She's not campaigning on the economy. She's avoiding any campaign ads with her and Joe Biden. You know, all those Biden rules and taxation threats and regulations, the smothering pillow of mandates really hanging up the U.S. Governor, just sit tight. I got to go through the numbers for the viewer. May and June numbers revised down by 29,000 jobs. That's about the 16th straight month of the initial government jobs number, later getting revised down. More than 1 million less jobs than initially reported. You know, the thing is, Governor, jobs are a lagging indicator, meaning they're the last thing to turn south when the economy is going badly. And factoring activity, manufacturing, that ISM manufacturing index, I know I just talked a lot, it contracted to the lowest level in 4 years.
Well, but let's keep in mind what you just previewed there was the fact that when jobs are going down, it's also an indication that even if you have a job, your job isn't paying you enough to keep up with the inflation that Bidenomics has brought you. Overall, over the past 4 years, we're talking about 20%. So even if you got a pay increase of, let's just go real crazy, not 5%, which is really more generous than most Americans have seen, but let's say that you had a 10% pay increase over this period of time. You've lost 10% of your income. You're behind the 8 ball, not ahead of it. And that's where most Americans are, especially working class Americans. And so that's why they can't afford to buy a Big Mac at McDonald's or fill up their grocery cart. And if they don't understand that this is the result of policies of Bidenomics, they'll end up voting for Kamala Harris, and they'll get it even worse.
Who wouldn't fucking understand?
Governor, and you've been in office. I mean, it's a constant downbeat, negative drumbeat of negativity out of the Biden White House. It started in 2008 out of the Obama White House. That only the government can fix everything. You just sit back, we're going to fix everything. Because you, America, you can't fix it. So let's listen to top Wall Street investor, the founder of Key Square Group. He's Scott Bessent. He was just on Larry Kudlow. We've got sound from Scott Bessent. Let's get your reaction to this.
She was Joe Biden's co-pilot in the inflation plane, and they crashed the American economy into the side of the mountain. Vice President Harris was the deciding vote for the American Rescue Plan and the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yes, that's right.
So she owns those. They would not have passed. It was 50-50. She broke the tie.
Yes, she did.
Those caused the great inflation. She was the border czar. That immigration, so I've talked about interest rates, inflation, and immigration are the things killing working class America. Tell me which one of those she doesn't own.
Right, so let me back up.
Her dudes don't own shit of them.
Steve Ratner, Jason Furman, Larry Summers, they all say, the spending has been the original sin behind inflation. Look at the Wall Street Journal poll. 52% say Trump is best able to handle the economy. What do you think of and voters in key swing states say that, yes, the economy is their top issue. What do you say to all this?
Well, if they're really serious about the economy being the top issue, they've got one choice, and it's Donald Trump. Because if they vote for Kamala Harris, they are not voting for their own economy, much less the U.S. economy. They're voting for increased inflation, higher jobless rates, high interest rates. We're not going to have the kind of economic turnaround we need. We've seen that. Donald Trump was president for 4 years, and if it weren't for COVID, he'd have the best economic record of any president in history.
Yeah.
He deregulated all of the harsh things that were killing business, brought manufacturing back, cut taxes. That put money in the pockets of people, and it also lowered prices. Because when businesses aren't having to pay increased taxes, they can lower their prices. That helps the consumer. When they raise taxes, they don't pay those taxes. They pass it on to the end user, the consumer. And that's who's paying it now, and it's costing everybody more than they can handle.
Governor Huckabee, have a good weekend. You worked hard there. We appreciate you joining us.
Hey, it's JD Vance. If you can't afford to donate because of the wreckage of Joe Biden's economy, I understand and want you to take care of your family. But if you can't afford to chip in anything, $1, $5, it really helps us get the message out to make America.
I like you, JD, but, bro, we've all in a stream, bros. End of the day, dudes. end of the day, we cannot let this shit show keep going on, bro.
Okay, welcome back. Now, the Biden White House is kicking off its sweeping student loan bailout into another high gear level of a campaign push. And I say that for a reason. They're emailing options to tens of millions of Americans on how they could get their student debt wiped out. Let's bring in, we're so excited, former Education Secretary Betsy DeVos under former President Trump. Betsy, great to see you again. What do you think of this?
Well, what I see is that desperate people do desperate things, and Vice President Kamala Harris and their administration are desperate to win in November, so they are doing desperate things and, frankly, blatantly illegal things in Washington. And that includes using taxpayer resources to try to win student votes and promise them debt forgiveness and blame Republicans if they don't go along with it. You know, they've been turned down at every step of the way. The Supreme Court turned their plans back. Other courts have turned subsequent plans back. And yet, just this past week, Secretary Cardona sent out on taxpayer resources emails to millions of students saying, remember this in November. Republicans don't want to forgive your student loans. We do. That's illegal. That's blatantly illegal, and the Office of Special Counsel should investigate.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to be a prick.
It sounds like they're.
I'm honestly, I'm not trying to be a prick, but you knowed when you decided you were going to college, you were taking on a loan. A lot of people like me that never went to college were not going to pay your debt notes, and to be asked to do it, it's ludicrous. It's ludicrous, man. I mean, in all honesty, it's ludicrous to think
the Education Secretary
that
White House is engaging
me or anybody else
to use the
are going to
Harris on student loan bailouts that taxpayers are paying for.
Yeah, absolutely right. And the American people know that student loan forgiveness isn't forgiving anything. It's simply transferring the debt of one to another taxpayer who likely hasn't taken out the loans, who likely hasn't or paid back on them faithfully. And so it's wrong, it's illegal, and we need to call them on it.
Yeah, I mean, the polling shows the majority of voters are against the student loan bailouts. They say it's unfair, it's wrong. Working class, blue collar people, people who never went to school. I have people in my family who never went to college. They're like, why should we have to pay the bill, higher taxes for this? And doesn't it basically just bail out fat cat academics who are doing tuition gouging?
Well, yeah, absolutely. The studies have shown that the biggest beneficiaries of their loan forgiveness schemes and scams make over $300,000 a year. And they're talking about between $870 billion and $1.4 trillion of student loan forgiveness. It's simply unconscionable.
Let the numbers sink in, dude.
It's illegal, and they have continued to ignore what the courts have said and continue to blatantly try to court and buy the votes of students.
Betsy, are you getting any reaction to the very important points you're making here?
Well, I think more and more people are realizing how desperate they are to win and what lengths they will go to. But this step by Secretary Cardona to use taxpayer resources and appeal directly to students to support Democrats instead of Republicans is simply wrong and illegal.
Betsy, come back soon. Thanks so much for bringing up the story. We appreciate you.
Caught fire a little earlier than I thought.
It's been 2 weeks since President Joe Biden announced he's dropping out of the race without saying why. And the mainstream media have been campaigning hard to make Kamala Harris look like the it girl who can save America. Yet up until about 5 minutes ago, Kamala Harris had not answered one question from journalists. And she still hasn't given an interview where, God forbid, she'd have to answer some tough questions and front up to scrutiny. But why would Kamala Harris do this when she's got outlets like CNN featuring her in CNN style? How's this headline? Look of the week. Megan Thee Stallion and Kamala Harris serve the power pantsuit 2 ways. Oh, and what does the article actually say? 2 suits, 2 women, 1 message. Hotties for Harris, How embarrassing. Look, I don't really have an issue with that campaign. What I have an issue with is the fact that Kamala Harris wants to be president of the United States, is straight up doing a Joe Biden right now, refusing to give interviews so she doesn't trip up because she is bound to, and is instead sitting back, relaxing, and letting the mainstream media do all the work for her, where they churn out glowing articles. How's this from Australia's own ABC? A remarkable new dynamic has emerged in the US election. Kamala Harris can win. Why? Because she's not Joe Biden? Because he's so old and incoherent, essentially anyone is better than him? Has everyone forgotten this is the woman who was part of the Joe Biden cover-up and who has been straight up lying to the American people for years about Joe Biden's cognitive decline? Now, as a woman who would love to see a female president one day, I know we can do better than this.
Well.
But here is the Vice President earlier today, reading a brief statement directly from her binder while taking no questions.
Thank you all. Madam Vice President, will you be meeting Evans and Paul when they return?
Where is the leadership? Meanwhile, JD Vance has actually been out on the ground at the southern border, which is in crisis thanks to Kamala Harris, answering tough questions.
The former president's comments yesterday to the National Association of Black Journalists, where he said that Vice President Harris is, quote, all of a sudden black. As a father of 3 biracial children, did those comments give you pause at all?
They don't give me pause at all. Look, all he said is that Kamala Harris is a chameleon. She goes to Georgia 2 days ago. She was raised in Canada. She puts on a fake Southern accent. She is everything to everybody, and she pretends to be somebody different depending on which audience she's in front of. I think it's totally reasonable for the president to call that out, and that's all he did. I mean, look, she's running as a tough-on-crime prosecutor, even though she implemented open border policies. She's saying that she wants to support the police, yet she wanted to defund the police just 3 years ago. It's totally reasonable to call out the fact that she pretends to be somebody different depending on the audience she's talking to.
And former US President Donald Trump has also been fronting up, taking hard questions from journalists. And say what you want about Donald Trump, you know that what you see is what you get. He is a leader who will tell you exactly how he sees it.
A long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always
But
identified as a black woman.
I
She went to a
respect
historically
either
black
one.
college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear. Now, I understand why people may hear those comments and everyone screams, you can't say that. But Kamala Harris has made race and gender the biggest part of her election campaign. It's her strongest selling point that she would become the first black woman in US history to become president of the United States. So we've been hearing this from her non-stop. But back in 2019, this was the messaging from Kamala Harris.
Okay, so what we're going to cook today is an Indian recipe. Yes. Because you are Indian.
Yes.
Okay, and I don't know that everybody knows that, but I find that wherever I go and I see Indian people at the supermarket, on the street, everyone's like, you know, Kamala Harris is Indian, right? It's like the thing we're so excited about to have you running for president. So we're both Indian, but actually we're both South Indian.
Yes. You look like the entire one half of my family.
Okay, thank you.
You do.
I've been telling people we're related already, so this is perfect. It's basically true. And so were you raised eating South Indian food?
South Indian food.
Brad, look, I think the comments from Donald Trump are not going to help him, but I do think that he reserves the right to criticize her campaign strategy, and she has made race part of her campaign strategy.
If you're not making $158,000 per year, but you'd like to, I strongly encourage you to start a bookkeeping business. That's right. If you're willing to learn how to use a free program called QuickBooks, you can make 6 figures working part-time from home or anywhere in the world. And here's the thing, QuickBooks is easy to learn, and you don't need a degree, prior experience, or to be a math expert to run a successful bookkeeping business. Hi, I'm Bill Von Fumetti, and I've helped over 3,000 people make incredible money online with just a laptop and a free QuickBooks account. And many of them are earning over $100,000 per year. Let's face it, it's demoralizing working your tail off at a job you don't love for a boss you can't stand, all while barely paying the bills and sacrificing precious time with your family. And maybe you've looked into starting your own business, but you're fed up with all the schemes that are out there. Well, bookkeeping is legitimate and respected work. You're providing a really valuable service to small businesses, and you're getting paid really well for it. Check out this recent study from...
Yeah, she certainly has, and I think there's some context to this conversation that's important. I watched the entire event that Trump did with these black journalists, and from the very get-go, it was incredibly hostile. They came at him really strong. I do give him some credit for honestly going there, because he was very much going into the lion's den, and then the question he was asked that actually prompted this unfortunate response.
No, there's another getting here, bro.
Mr. Garland, why Jack Smith? Why'd you pick him?
I've said at the time I appointed Mr. Smith, I explained he was independent. He was a longtime career prosecutor
But there are probably other people who you would describe as independent, long-time career prosecutor. Why did you pick? This is probably the most high-profile special counsel investigation, maybe in American history. You're going to be investigating a former president, a candidate for president, and leading in all the polls, and you pick Jack Smith. Most important selection maybe ever made from Attorney General when you come to a special counsel. I just want to know why you could have picked
Well, I'm telling
former
you.
AGs, deputy AGs, U.S. attorneys. You got all kinds of lawyers in this town, but you picked Jack Smith.
All the people you just mentioned would be political appointees. I appointed somebody who was not a political appointee, somebody who was independent, nonpartisan, with a record of career experience as a prosecutor. That seemed to me the perfect resume for making that kind of.
He was a guy. Guy worked. Had to bring him back from Europe. He worked at the ICC. Worked at the World Court. He was the best pick for the most high-profile investigation ever.
He was independent. He was nonpartisan. He had never held a political office. He was never appointed in a political office.
Was he your first choice?
He had a long career as a career.
Was he your first choice?
I'm not going to go into the questions.
Did you know him before you picked him?
I did not.
You ever worked with him?
I did not.
Did you meet with him prior to announcing his selection and tell him what was going on?
Of course I did.
What happened in that meeting?
I met with him. I asked him if he would be willing to do this. We talked about my understandings of the role of this office, which are on the public record. That's all.
Did he ask for the job?
This is not a job I don't think anybody asks for. I'm sorry.
No, but that's not the question I asked you. I said, did Jack Smith ask for the job?
He did not ask me for the job, no.
Did he convey through someone else that he wanted the job?
I would be surprised if that were the case, but
But you don't know?
No, I don't know.
So he may have?
I can only tell you what I know. I chose him because he had a record of impartial career experience as a prosecutor. That's why he was chosen.
Was it impartial when he went after Governor McDonnell?
He was a member of
He was after Governor McDonnell. That case gets appealed to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court unanimously said it was wrong and overturns the conviction.
He was in the public integrity section of the Justice Department, a career position. They made the decisions they thought were warranted, and we respect the decision of the Supreme Court.
Did the fact that he was interested in going after the very people who were targeted by the IRS about a decade ago, did that have any influence on your selection? Okay, let's put up this slide here. This is from Jack Smith to some other folks in the Justice Department, and it says, could we ever charge a conspiracy to violate laws of the U.S. for misuse of such nonprofits to get around existing campaign finance laws? Jack Smith was looking to prosecute the very people who were targeted by the Obama IRS.
I don't know. You have excerpts from an email I've never seen. You should know that
IRS Commissioner Sarah, I'm just asking, did this weigh into your decision? Did you know about this?
No,
what Jack Smith was trying to do?
I also don't know if it's true now.
IRS Commissioner Sarah Ingram oversees this from Jack Smith himself. Let's discuss tomorrow, but maybe we should try to set up a meeting this week. And here's a response.
Celebrate love.
With 1-800-Flowers.com.
We were 11 years old when we met.
And she didn't like me at all.
I didn't. But you played tennis together.
Here's the response. You didn't get your meeting with Miss Ingram from the IRS, but she's sending the head of the exempt organizations, Lois Lerner, who's known to us. So Jack Smith meeting with Lois Lerner, looking for ways to prosecute the very people who were victims of the Obama IRS. And I'm just asking, did that factor in your decision to name Jack Smith as special counsel?
I didn't have any idea about the things.
Didn't know about that.
No, and I don't know whether they're true now by looking at this.
But they're definitely true. But you didn't know about it. This guy was so important, you have to bring him from Europe back here to go after President Trump. Name him as a special counsel. Do you regret the pick?
I'm sorry,
Do you regret picking him?
No, I do not regret picking him.
Well, prosecutors aren't supposed to tamper with evidence, and it looks like that's what he did. He changed the sequence of the documents that he seized from Mar-a-Lago.
I'm sorry, that's a false characterization, but that is ongoing.
Here's what he said to the court, Mr. Attorney General. There are some boxes where the order of items within the box is not the same as in the associated scans. I mean, he said it. I didn't say it. He told the court that.
Now you're asking me to comment on a discovery dispute that's ongoing in a court. I don't know the facts of it, and I'm not going to comment on it.
No, this is from Jack Smith filing with the court. He admitted to the court that they tampered with the evidence. He mishandled the very documents he's charging President Trump with mishandling. And I'm just asking, do you regret picking this guy as the special counsel in the most important special counsel investigation probably in American history?
I'm sorry, I did not hear the words tamper in the statement that Mr. Smith filed. He did not use those words.
Well, let me ask it this way. Are you supposed to change the order of the documents that you seized and the physical documents don't match up with the scanned documents? Are you supposed to do that as a prosecutor?
This is a matter in dispute, discovery in that court, and I'm going to leave it for the district court to make a determination after.
I would just say one last thing.
It's
not in dispute. This is what he said in the court filing. Jack Smith's team said that to the judge in the court. By the way, this case is now basically on hold because they've screwed up so many things.
Again, I don't know whether your description of the facts are true or not true, and I'm not going to intrude in a decision in a district court.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Mr. Attorney General, we appreciate your being here. We appreciate how you have led this department with integrity and discipline and your enormous public service.
Get some air, sir, Sheriff.
Us to sit through this endless cascade of false allegations and conspiracy theories and innuendo. The chairman began this hearing with the dramatic statement that justice is no longer blind. By that, he means that justice is no longer objective or impartial, that it is suddenly now a respecter of persons in the wrong way. That is, it will distinguish between people based on their position. But of course, the chairman's real problem is that justice remains no respecter of persons. That you can be the former president of the United States, but if you commit crimes, you'll be held responsible. That's his problem. That's the problem of all my Republican colleagues right now, and that is they're about to nominate a convicted felon. And they don't know how to cope with that. They don't know how to cope with the justice system. It treats Donald Trump the same as it would any other citizen. And so they have to push these conspiracy theories that they know are patently false.
Bullshit, Sheriff.
And they try to run over you with questions they won't let you answer, because their whole arguments are utterly insupportable and destructive of our justice system. They care more about this convicted felon than they do the country. I have to say I'm pleased and a bit surprised to see that the flag in this committee is still flying right side up, because they want to turn it upside down, even as they want to turn our justice system upside down. Let me address the conspiracy theory of the day, which is somehow President Biden, through your department, has convicted Donald Trump in Manhattan in an effort to weaponize justice against the former president. So let me just ask some basic questions about this phony conspiracy theory. Did you appoint Alvin Bragg to be Manhattan DA?
No.
Of course not. He's elected. Did you select the jury in that case?
The judge selected the jury.
Did you select the judge in that case?
No.
No, of course not. The judge was randomly selected. Did you select the jury in that case?
No.
The jury was actually selected by Donald Trump and his attorneys. Did you reach a verdict in that case?
No.
Did you instruct the jury in that case?
No.
Did you tell the prosecutor what charges to bring in that case?
No.
This was 12 ordinary New Yorkers who weighed the evidence and found Donald Trump guilty of 34 felonies. And instead of celebrating the fact that in this country, an ordinary group of jurors, an ordinary group of 12 people can still adjudicate a case involving one of the most powerful people in the country, no, they would denigrate the whole system. They would tear it down. In the service of this convicted felon, they would tear everything down. They would tear the house of this democracy down around them. They say it's unprecedented to bring charges against a former president. You're damn right it's unprecedented. We've never had a president of the United States who was making hush money payments to a porn star and then falsifying business records to cover it up. Yeah, that's unprecedented. We've never had a president withhold classified information and then obstruct the investigation. That is unprecedented. We've never had a president incite a violent attack on the Capitol. That is unprecedented. And you know what else is unprecedented? The fact that so many leaders of that party are perfectly fine with all of that. In their headlong pursuit of power, they're perfectly fine with that. They're going to nominate a convicted felon as their presidential candidate. And they have another conspiracy theory, which is when a search was executed of the president's residence in Mar-a-Lago, they went in, as the president said, locked and loaded and ready to take him out. Yet another dangerous falsehood. And your dedicated public servants at the Justice Department are having their lives threatened because of the irresponsible actions of people on this committee and in the Senate and elsewhere who would endanger the lives of those committed to enforcing law and order, even as they claim to be a party of law and order. Mr. Attorney General, I am grateful for your service, for your withstanding all of this. We will get through this because of people like you and the honorable public servants at the Justice Department. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Attorney General, for being here today. I just have a couple of areas of interest to me, at least. The first one has to do with your remarks earlier in the hearing where you were drawing the distinction between state court and federal court, and you were saying that state court is, quote, another jurisdiction. State, quote, prosecutors are independent. Third remark, prosecutors are completely independent. Fourth remark, action decisions of the state prosecutors are independent and they're taken of their own volition. What disturbs me about those assertions is what actually happened. I'll go with the Fannie Willis case first, and it just mentioned that her friends spent some 8 hours in the White House discussing the case. Her friend, Fannie Willis's friend. And my question to you is, if they're so independent, why were people who were involved in the state action up talking to the federal folks? How do you explain that?
Well, I don't know if it's true. I don't know anything about that. I don't know if she was there, what she was talking about. I don't know anything to support this allegation at all.
I think what I have here on my notes are, were you aware that the Fulton County DA, Fannie Willis's office, coordinated with Special Counsel Smith, the Biden White House, and the Democrat-run January 6th committee during her investigation of President Trump? You're saying you don't know anything about that?
So I don't know anything about that, no.
Would it disturb you if that actually happened?
Well, I imagine that if this committee asks the prosecutor for information, the prosecutor asks this committee for information, there may be conversations about that information. I think that is relatively routine. I don't have whether there were any conversations with the special counsel, but it would not
they got derangement bad, bros.
With people in different jurisdictions who have evidence, obtaining the evidence.
Were you aware that DA Willis hired her friend Nathan Wade to prosecute President Trump? As he met, that Mr. Wade met with the Biden White House on 2 occasions for 8 hours?
I don't know anything.
Again, would that disturb you? The reason I'm asking this is because it appears that there is this double standard. Some people refer to it as a two-tier system. That is, one tier for certain people like President Trump and the other tier for everybody else. And that disturbs me. Would it disturb you if there was a different type of justice being applied to our former president than that which is applied to other defendants?
Of course it would disturb me. There's only one tier of justice. We treat like cases alike. We don't give any benefit to a powerful person over a non-powerful person, any benefit to a Democrat over a Republican.
I'm not concerned about the defendants getting the benefit so much as I am the prosecutors in state court coming to the federal folks and basically saying, hey, we know you've been doing all this work here, give us all this material. Now, maybe that much is fine, but That isn't what generally happens. Now, if you were a former president, you're going to get a lot of attention, and that's exactly what's been happening here. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think the people of the United States think it's fair that the former president would be ganged up on, if you will, by both the federal government and the state government. That does not seem right. I mean, you may be doing it, and I guess you're saying that it would be fine if that did happen. But to me, it seems like a double standard. I want to shift over to the audio tapes. And you're a former judge, so you're very familiar with the best evidence rule. It's Rule 1002. And I went to law school. I remember the discussions about, quote, best evidence, but you would know it far better than I. You must have dealt with it literally hundreds of times. But the best evidence rule to we rural practitioners of country law meant that if you had one piece of evidence, an audio tape, you'd be far more likely to want to use it, and perhaps it would be required as opposed to a transcript. Is that correct?
I respect your experience, but I'm afraid the best evidence rule is not applicable. Best evidence rule is reflected in Rule 1003 of the Federal Rules of Evidence, and it provides that a duplicate is admissible for all purposes as an original unless there is a genuine dispute about its authenticity. For the reasons I've stated extensively in answers to the other members, there is no genuine dispute about the authenticity of the transcripts. So the best evidence rule simply has no application in this case.
So actually, I would agree with you in the sense that we're not in federal court, and but I also want to tell you that when the essence of his decision, Mr. Hur's decision, was that there was a challenge that our president is facing when it comes to his memory and his demeanor, then I have to agree with the gentleman from North Carolina that the audio tapes are the best evidence of exactly how qualified Mr. Hur was in making his decision that he should not prosecute. With that, I see my time is exhausted, so I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Attorney General Garland. I thank you for being here today. I thank 115,000 members of the Department of Justice for your faithful service. And I am sorry for the regrettable conversations that are going on. I've served on this committee for the better part of 6 years. I begged to be on this committee when I ran. There was so much I wanted to work on, like focusing on gun violence, like focusing on the opioid poisoning epidemic, and so many other things having to do with the protection of civil rights and the rule of law. And yet what we've observed in this committee, in hearing after hearing after hearing, sadly, is misinformation, disinformation, very pointedly with the purpose of tearing down America's faith in our institutions. This is one such hearing. There are members on this committee who would rather tear down the faith in the independence of the Department of Justice than say that one man is responsible for his behaviors and is being held to account, both civilly and now criminally. Mr. Trump's behaviors are the reasons they are railing and they are upset. He's been found guilty of fraud,
Hi, I'm JT, and I made Result Hunter, the search engine for conservatives. Let me just tell you what it does. First of
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. And thank you, Senator Ricketts, for not just this particular topic, but Senator Ricketts is a particularly active member on the EPW committee. And I appreciate that because I know you know it, being a former governor, probably better than some others. So interesting developments, some of them topical today. And some of you all have heard me talk about this, but I think this should be an outrage, really, to every tax-paying citizen. We're talking about the Inflation Reduction Act, which is almost 2 years old as of this August. And it also, I noticed in the president's schedule that he was getting briefed on the Inflation Reduction Act. So I'm sure he got this briefing while he was being briefed on the Inflation Reduction Act, which we have renamed Invest in Radical Activities Act, because that's what this is about. So we've really been digging into who is getting these massive amounts of grants through the EPA. There's $3 billion in the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, that will go for different climate kind of buckets. And in our investigation, we found that a lot of this money that's going out really has little to do with the environment and a lot to do with funding groups that are basically engaged in what I characterize as anti-American activities. They're anti-American, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-police, and anti-border security. So the first one I'm going to go to is, and before I do that, I'm also going to say that Vice President Harris, who is now the nominee for the Democrat presidential race, is quoted here. "I have put equity at the center of our nation's largest investment in climate in history to reach the organizations that know their community best." That's what she said when they rolled out and actually named these organizations. And interestingly, today, there was a news article today saying that the green groups have now formed a coalition today, and guess who they're endorsing for president? Vice President Harris. So let's go over to the following one. I say follow the money because I think that's where you find out. The first one is climate justice. It's up on the top right-hand bar. They're $100 million. They have glorified Hamas in a lot of their social media, on their websites and other things. And they think Israel has no right to exist. They're getting $100 million. This is a direct grant to them. The next one is the NDN Collective. Do you know them? Yes, they're a partner. Yes, they, on their social media, call the United States a so-called country and also call for the defunding of the police and our United States military. Imagine that in these times right now. Next, we have two New York and New Jersey coalitions that are getting $50 million. They're actually going to be participating in granting $50 million. Their quotes are, "The border and concept of citizenship is racist, and wants no collaboration with federal immigration officials, and the ICE agenda is racist as well." Then we have the social and environmental entrepreneurs, $50 million. Again, abolish police, abolish prisons. The latest one, and these were all, those previous ones I'm talking about were all announced in December by the Vice President and named on the EPA's materials as they rolled them out through the press. The Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, the most recent funding was announced last week, is getting between $1 and $3 million, and they are actively advocating to defund police, decriminalize shoplifting, and abolish our prisons. So I think that that this uncovers quite a bit of the $3 billion. We're up to $200 million, actually a little bit more than that, if you count everything all in. And this is just the lack of accountability. The administrator of the EPA has been questioned about this. He says the money hasn't gone out. That was their first thing. Well, they haven't gotten the money yet. Now they're saying, well, we don't check out the partner organizations. So this NDN would be a partner organization as opposed to an actual grantee. So why aren't you vetting these people? I mean, this is taxpayers' dollars. And what do they have to do with telling people how to live and cope better and clean up their environment? So I think that we need to know that these are appalling to me and to many of us who work hard to make sure that we're not just paying our taxes, but we're also making sure that we're making good investments from the federal government. So what are we doing about it? Well, we're shining a light on it and urging the EPA to not disperse this money. And coincidentally, they haven't dispersed all of this money yet, so we'll see what happens. I pushed in the Appropriations Committee for more money for the EPA Inspector General, somebody to follow the money within the EPA, because they know best. An Inspector General would be able to do that. And then I think the most important thing is when we take control of Congress after January, we will be able to defund a lot of this, but we also be able to follow it and do much more oversight. So I'm going to turn turn it over to my friend from Nebraska and see his perspective on this.
Well, thank you, Senator Capito, for highlighting this and showing some transparency and some sunlight on what's going on here with regard to these grants through the Inflation Reduction Act. But as you all more aptly named it, the Investment in Radical Activists Act.
Fox News alert. The Secret Service held its first press conference since Donald Trump was nearly executed on live TV. After stonewalling the media and congressional investigators for 3 weeks, Director Ronald Rowe made a shocking admission. Watch.
You can't be serious. Can you confirm that this was the first 2024 campaign event that counter-sniper teams were assigned to the former president?
It was the first time Secret Service counter-snipers were deployed to support the former president's detail.
The former president of the United States and the nominee as the Republican, the man who Democrats and the media have been labeling a clear and present danger to democracy, Hitler and a dictator, wasn't given Secret Service counter-sniper teams at his campaign rallies for the last 2 years. That means when they put Trump on trial in Manhattan, every day when he returned from court to Trump Tower, there were no Secret Service counter-snipers. The whole world knew Trump's schedule and location for 6 weeks in a city with thousands of windows and high-rises. No Secret Service counter-snipers. That means when Trump was in the Bronx, no Secret Service counter-snipers. Anyone could have climbed onto a tree, could have gone onto a rooftop with a gun. What about when he went to the bodega in Harlem after court? He's enveloped by buildings, hundreds of windows, any one of which a rifle could have fired from. No Secret Service counter-snipers. So why all of a sudden, after 2 years of no Secret Service counter-snipers, they showed up in Butler? And that was the rally where there was an attempt on his life. After the assassination attempt, the intelligence community leaked an exclusive to their friends at CNN, saying the reason they added counter-snipers to Butler was because of an Iranian threat to Trump's life. But that doesn't make any sense, because there's been an Iranian fatwa out for Trump since he whacked Soleimani. That was over 4 years ago. And when the feds were pressed about this, they admitted there wasn't any new intelligence from Iran. What a coincidence. The Secret Service surrounding Trump's been an illusion. We believe these agents were in constant communication with each other, using the latest technology. Technology we didn't even know about. Turns out, the Secret Service counter-sniper team in Butler never had radios that day.
You mentioned that there were text messages from Butler ESU to U.S. Secret Service counter-snipers. I'm curious if that is routine. What was the plan to relay information from locals to the Secret Service initially? What is the protocol?
With respect to the counter-snipers, they were using cellular or telephone text communications. At this point, moving forward, what I have directed now is that everybody should be using the radio net.
If you see a man with a gun on the roof, do you have time to text your counter-snipers? Wouldn't it be a lot easier if you could just radio into their earpiece armed threat on the roof of the AGR building? Are those counter-snipers up on the roof just for show? And it looks like these guys had their phones on silent, because when the locals alerted the Secret Service team leader, we still don't know who that is, that there was a suspicious person with a rangefinder creeping around the AGR building, it took the team leader 8 minutes to text the counter-sniper team. 8 minutes is a long time. The counter-snipers, if they even looked at their phones, saw this just 7 minutes before Trump took the stage. But did they even look at their phones? We don't know. They won't tell us. When the locals spotted crooks on the roof with a rifle, they radioed it into the Secret Service site leader. And the director claims the site leader never got it.
It was so apparent to me that in this incident, in the final 30 seconds, which has been the focus of what happened before the assailant opened fire, there was clearly radio transmissions that may have happened on that local radio net that we did not have. And so we have to do a better job of co-locating, leveraging that counterpart system, and this is going to drive our operations going forward.
Translation, the Secret Service set up a walkie-talkie system with the locals that they weren't in on. It's like whisper down the lane. And when the news finally gets to the Secret Service, they text their counter-sniper guys. That system's destined to fail. They're telling us that the counter-sniper team didn't know there was a man on the roof with a gun until shots rang out. That's what they're telling us. Even as we watch videos of Trump supporters screaming, "There's a man with a gun on the roof," the director was caught in another lie. He claimed the Secret Service briefed the locals the morning of the rally.
In the morning of July 13th, a site briefing was conducted with Secret Service personnel and law enforcement partners supporting the event.
But that's not what the locals told us.
We were supposed to get a face-to-face briefing with the Secret Service snipers whenever they arrived, and that never happened. So I think that was probably a pivotal point where I started thinking things were wrong, because that never happened, and we had no communication with the Secret Service.
Secret Service has never talked to any of our people either before the rally that day or to this moment has ever talked to us in regards to what our actions were that day.
The Secret Service hired these guys to protect the president's life, never briefed them that day, never talked to them that day, and haven't talked to them at all since the shooting. What a convenient way not to leave a trail. The security for this rally was overseen by the Secret Service Pittsburgh field office. And according to a whistleblower who spoke to Senator Hawley's office, there was a female decision maker, but we can't confirm a name at this point. Whoever was responsible for this on the ground is being protected. And Director Rowe says they're actually the victim here.
If you can, describe the Pittsburgh field office and their level of experience, especially in preparing for events like this, and also have they explained their thinking and how they defined the perimeter that day?
Sure. Thanks, Holmes. You know, our Pittsburgh field office, I don't think there's anybody in the Secret Service who is feeling this more than the men and women of our Pittsburgh field office. And I've met with them. And they are down right now. It's an open wound that they are carrying. They are a very experienced office. And what I will say is they are cooperating with the mission assurance. They are definitely down right now.
No, they're down right now. The poor little Pittsburgh field office. Maybe we can get them therapy dogs. Trump almost took a bullet to the brain. He's the one with the open wound. And the only reason he's still alive isn't because of the Secret Service and the poor little Pittsburgh field office. It's because he got lucky and turned his head to the right. The entire Pittsburgh field office should be placed on administrative leave, have all their electronics seized, and be put under formal investigation. But the director hasn't axed anybody. And the people in charge of the bubble.
I agree 100%. Yes, they should. That's uncalled for, bros.
From Real Clear Politics,
I don't give a shit, like him or hate him. To let somebody assassinate him is
Susan
just...
Crabtree says the group was made up of various field office agents who don't train together. Is that why agents who surrounded Trump sounded so confused?
It's sad, dudes.
If you needed another reason to vote in this election, it's this. If Kamala is elected, the Trump assassination attempt investigation will be bottlenecked.
Yep.
Donald Trump told me that if he's elected, he'll declassify everything about the attempt on his life.
Well, I don't blame
So if
him.
you want to know what happened this July, you know what to do in November. Congressman Corey Mills joins us now. Corey, what did you hear today from this director of the Secret Service?
Well, first off, it was completely unsat for the Secret Service director to try and act as if his information is going to be sufficient to the American people. What did we confirm here today? One, that we never should have had it on this actual site location without a proper advance. And if we saw that we didn't have a full presidential package, we should have moved the event 15 minutes down the road.
$10 can help fund powerful ads to reach undecided voters nationwide. $10 can help open.
What if the most recent polls are wrong like they have been in the past? Over the last 3 election cycles, in 2012, 2016, and 2020, polls have shown margins much larger or much smaller than the actual results. In this video, we are going to be looking at the most recent polling averages in all 50 states and adjusting for these past polling errors. with Biden stepping aside in favor of Kamala Harris. Our results today will shock you, so let's get started. Starting out with the states with the least amount of competition. For these safe states, polls are generally safe for their respective candidates, and it would take a considerable adjustment to change that fact. Before we start actually filling in the map, it's important to note that because there aren't many recent Harris versus Trump polls yet, we will use Biden's most recent numbers for states that has no recent Harris poll. Trump is expected to win Alaska, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, North and South Dakota, Nebraska at large, as well as his 1st and 3rd congressional districts, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia, South Carolina, and Maine's 2nd congressional district. Adding these all together gives Trump a healthy amount of electoral votes at 126. And before we continue, only 3.8% of you guys are actually subscribed, so make sure you take your time to subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election in November. Moving to Harris's safe states, she is expected to win Hawaii, Washington, Oregon, California, Illinois, Maine's 1st congressional district, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, DC, and New York. We are also going to label the 2nd district of Nebraska as a toss-up, just because there isn't enough data to apply it to this video, and the most recent poll from Torchlight Strategies shows a tie. With all these states accounted for, Harris currently holds the lead over Trump, but this is still a close race. Moving on to the 17 closest states this election. As I already stated at the beginning of the video, I calculated the average bias by taking the last polling average from each of these states and cross-referenced them with the actual results from the last 3 election cycles. By applying this to the most recent averages from these much closer states, we can see a potentially
that the prosecution of Donald Trump in New York, one of the main guys was a Department of Justice official in the Biden administration who jumped ship to join a local prosecutor's office to go after Donald Trump.
Well, Senator, that happens all the time. People are appointed from Washington.
Kristen, it happens.
Hold on, Senator,
are you really
finish.
saying, Kristen,
Senator,
it
let me finish my
happens
sentence,
all the
then I'll let
time
you finish.
that the number 3 person in the Department of Justice jumps ship to join a local prosecutor's office to go after the president's political opponent? I don't think that's ever happened.
Guys, in this video, we have J.D. Vance completely destroying Meet the Press's Kristen Welker. Let's get into the video. I'll give you my thoughts on the back end.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I want to talk to you about the immunity ruling and the implications. This is what Donald Trump said last year about wanting to target his political opponents. Take a listen.
I will appoint a real special prosecutor to go after the most corrupt president in the history of the United States of America, Joe
What's wrong with that?
And the entire Biden crime family.
Senator, if former President Trump were to win, if you were to be his vice president, would you support him appointing a special prosecutor to go after his political opponents, the Bidens?
Well, first of all, Kristen, I find it interesting how much the media and the Democrats have lost their mind over this particular quote. Donald Trump is talking about appointing a special prosecutor to investigate Joe Biden for wrongdoing. Joe Biden has done exactly that for the last few years and has done far more in addition to that to engage in a campaign of lawfare against his political opposition. I think what Donald Trump is simply saying is we ought to investigate the prior administration. There are obviously many instances of wrongdoing. The House Oversight Committee has identified a number of corrupt business transactions that may or may not be criminal. Of course, you have to investigate to find out. So I think Donald Trump saying, look, let's do the basic work of investigating wrongdoing is a totally reasonable thing for him to do. And frankly, the Biden administration has done far worse. So if you think that what Donald Trump is proposing is a threat to democracy, isn't what Biden has already done a massive threat to our system of law and government?
Senator, just to be very clear, though, Joe Biden didn't appoint a special prosecutor. The Attorney General did that. Trump was indicted by grand juries. He was found guilty by a jury of his peers in New York. But can we just go back to the core question here? Would you support him taking such an action? It sounds like you're saying, yes, you would.
Did you know that in Texas, rifles can be carried in public without a license? Whereas in Florida, no open carrying is allowed, except in unique situations like in hunting or fishing. Hi, I'm Kolian Noir, a Pro 2A attorney with over 2 million YouTube subscribers. I'm always a little shocked when I see or speak.
I would absolutely support investigating prior wrongdoing by our government. Absolutely, that's what you have to have in a system of law and order, Kristen. But I have to reject the premise here. Joe Biden appointed the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, who of course answers to Joe Biden, can be fired by Joe Biden. So the idea that the Biden administration has nothing to do with the appointment of the special prosecutor, I think completely betrays a misunderstanding of how our system of government actually works. And of course, Kristen, we have to make this point, Kristen, that the prosecution of Donald Trump in New York, which I think now is fundamentally been thrown in doubt by this immunity case, it was one of the main guys was a Department of Justice official in the Biden administration who jumped ship to join a local prosecutor's office to go after Donald Trump.
And yet the DOJ
if
told
that doesn't make you question the legitimacy of the prosecution, that's a problem.
Well, Senator, that happens all the time. People are appointed from Washington, but the DOJ told Congress, testified this week
Kristen,
that it reviewed
it happens.
hold on, Senator,
are
let
you
me
really
finish.
saying, Kristen?
Senator, let me finish my sentence, then I'll let you finish. Hold on. Let me just finish this. The DOJ told Congress this week it reviewed all communications since Biden took office and found no contact between federal prosecutors and those involved with that case in New York. Can you stick to the substance of the question, though? Let me just ask, because I just want to stick with this line of theory that you are laying out, which is you are saying it's not okay for Joe Biden to weaponize the Justice Department. If it's not okay for Joe Biden to weaponize the Justice Department, as you say, which there's no evidence of that, why is it okay for Donald Trump to do that?
He's not said that.
First of all, you said that it happens all the time, that the number 3 person in the Department of Justice jumps ship to join a local prosecutor's office to go after the president's political opponent. I don't think that's ever happened in the history of American democracy, and I don't think that we should legitimize it. Now, if Donald Trump's attorney general had his number 2 or his number 3 jump ship to a local prosecutor's office in Ohio or Wisconsin, and that person then went after Donald Trump's political opposition, that's a different conversation.
Senator,
all he's suggesting is that we should investigate credible arguments of wrongdoing. That's all that Donald Trump is saying. That is not a threat to democracy. That's merely reinforcing our system of law and government.
Bottom line, you are okay with Donald Trump appointing a special prosecutor to go after his political enemies, which would include Joe Biden. You're just, to button that up, it sounds like you're saying yes. Let me move on, though, to my next question. I want to talk to you about the Heritage Foundation. It's a conservative think tank in Washington. It shapes the agenda they would like to see in a Trump second term. The president said this after the Supreme Court's ruling this week. Take a look.
We're in the process of taking this country back. No one in the audience should be despairing. No one should be discouraged. We ought to be really encouraged by what happened yesterday. We are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
Do you support those calls for a revolution, and would political violence ever be justified?
Well, of course, political violence is never justified, Kristen. You'll have to ask the president of the Heritage Foundation to defend his remarks if you'd like to do that. I will say, look, the Heritage Foundation does a lot of good work. It does a lot of things that I disagree with, a lot of things that I agree with. But the Heritage Foundation is a nonprofit organization that works on public policy, and I think it's an important part of how D.C. functions and operates. We'll continue to have important conversations in the Republican Party with a whole host of think tanks from the right and from the left as we craft public policy. That's the way the city works. And again, I'm not going to be the person who serves as the spokesperson for the Heritage Foundation. I don't have any affiliation.
Sounds like you're distancing yourself from those comments that talk of political violence.
Look, Kristen, I certainly don't think political violence is justified. That's certainly actually not what I think that Kevin Roberts was saying to begin with. But again, have him on your program to defend what he said, and I think that's the best thing to do.
Let me ask you specifically about Project 2025 for our viewers so that they know. It's basically a policy blueprint for a second Trump presidency. It's supported by the Heritage Foundation and other conservative groups. The Biden campaign has said Project 25, quote, should scare every single American. It would give Trump limitless power over our daily lives. Among the things they are calling for is reversing approval of the abortion pill mifepristone. But Donald Trump says He supports access to that pill, actually. Do you support access to abortion medication as Donald Trump does?
Well, Kristen, you asked about Project 2025, and I want to be clear here that Trump explicitly has said his own transition team runs the Trump transition and will run the Trump administration. Again, you have a whole host of organizations, some of which have good ideas, some of which have bad ideas, and some of which have both. And I'm sure the Trump administration will talk to a lot of people as it's crafting an agenda to bring back American manufacturing jobs, to lower inflation, and to bring peace and prosperity back to the world. That's the whole reason why me and so many others are trying to reelect Donald Trump, is because the agenda actually works. It was his agenda, and I think it'll work again for the American people. On the question of the abortion pill, what so many of us have said is that, look, we certainly don't, the Supreme Court made a decision saying that the American people should have access to that medication. Donald Trump has supported that opinion. I support that opinion. I think it's important to say that we actually have to have an important conversation in this country about what our abortion policy should be. Donald Trump is the pragmatic leader here. He's saying most abortion policy is going to be decided by the states. We want to make it easier and more affordable for young women and parents to have families to begin with. We want to lower housing costs, eliminate those surprise medical bills that so many families see after they have a baby. That's the Trump and Republican approach to this issue. Meanwhile, Joe Biden wants taxpayer-funded abortion up to the moment of birth. It's so crazy to me how the Democrats frame this as Republicans. Just let me finish, Kristen. They frame Democrats as being reasonable and pragmatic, when in reality, Republicans are the one trying to find some common ground here.
As you know, very few abortions take place later in pregnancy, and almost always because there is a medical emergency. I know Trump is trying to distance himself from Project 2025, but we have to point out that a number of people who are involved with it are former Trump officials, Ben Carson, Peter Navarro, Russ Vought, and others. But just to be clear, you support mifepristone being accessible.
Yes, Kristen, I do. But again, on the Project 2025 issue, what the media and the Democrats are trying to do is attach its most unpopular elements to the Trump administration. It's a 900-page document. I guarantee there are things that Trump likes and dislikes about that 900-page document, but he is the person who will determine the agenda of the next administration. All he said very explicitly is, I am in charge of the next administration because I'm the person running for president. It's just important to make that clarification.
All these leftist media news anchors, can you let the people finish their answer if you're going to ask them a question? Now, for her to say that this happens all the time, when she was talking about this New York district attorney prosecuting Trump, this never happens. Trump was found guilty on 34 felony counts while rerunning for election, because in my opinion, that was his actual crime, right? Running for re-election. It's the one and only reason that this case was ever brought up. They prosecuted the man for trying to be president again. That's the actual reality. That's the real crime here, which isn't even a crime. But you might be wondering, if you're not familiar with this, a lot of my listeners that are in Europe, if you're listening to this, what was Trump actually convicted of? Even after he was convicted on those 34 felony counts, no one can actually tell you what the crime was. One possible theory is actually that the government of New York really doesn't like it when you overpay your taxes, because that's the only thing that you can actually prove. If we're still going to pretend that this was a legitimate trial, in order to convict Donald Trump, it was not enough to show that he had supposedly falsified a business record. The government also had to show that Trump had falsified those records in furtherance of some other crime. But what was the other crime? If you go back and look at this bogus nonsense, during the closing arguments, prosecutor Joshua Steinglass offered a theory. He said that Trump had falsified business records in order to violate a different New York state law that prohibited the use of unlawful means to promote any candidate for office. But that still leaves a question unanswered, right? What were those unlawful means that Trump supposedly engaged in? You see how ridiculous this gets. So you can keep peeling back the onion, but nobody can still tell you what the crime was. You still continue to come up empty. And prosecutor Steinglass never actually said what the unlawful means were, but he did mention a few possibilities, and one of those possibilities was that Trump violated a New York tax law. Now, when you hear that, when you hear somebody violated a New York tax law, you think, wow, okay, that guy must be engaging in tax evasion. That must be what they're alleging. But they were not accusing Donald Trump of tax evasion. Specifically, Steinglass argued that Trump's 1099 form was inaccurate because the payment to Michael Cohen was actually a reimbursement and not a compensation, as the Trump organization had reported. But if that were the case, you can see I'm a numbers guy, then the government, under its own theory of how Trump's team should have filed the paperwork, would be getting less money out of the deal because they're not owed income tax on reimbursement. They're only owed income tax on compensations. Now, I went through these crazy transcripts and found a quote from the prosecutor, because when I heard it, I couldn't actually believe it, so I found the actual quote. Here's the quote. This is what he told the jury. It's true that the result of the improper accounting is that the taxes would have to be paid that weren't owed. You don't have to pay taxes on a reimbursement. So the results of reporting them as income tax is that taxes are actually getting paid that are not owed. As the judge would have told you, in those cases, it's a crime to prepare false tax documents, regardless, even if when doing so does not result in you underpaying your taxes, but overpaying your taxes. Let me repeat that. It's a crime to prepare false tax documents, even if when doing so does not result in you underpaying taxes. It's very possible that the jury could have convicted Donald Trump for falsifying business records in order to cover up the fact that he overpaid on his taxes. And you're going to tell me that this is something legit that happens all the time. This is villainous behavior. And we're supposed to just believe that that was a threat to our democracy?
That is hot.
That it justifies potentially imprisoning a political opponent, a man who at that time was leading in every major poll across the country? And also, just for good measure, if the jury didn't buy the theory that the government and the judge gave them, they had a whole menu of other options that they could choose from. One of them was related to covering up a violation of campaign finance. Another was a violation of business record laws. And as I think it was Tablet Magazine put it, the jury could have found that Trump falsified business records to conspire to steal an election. That was another theory. So which one of these circular, incoherent conspiracies did the jury actually buy? Who knows? The judge didn't require them to make the decision unanimously. Each juror could have picked a different crime to convict Trump of committing. We may never know. So this was a former president who was leading every presidential candidate, and he was convicted of 34 felony charges by a jury of his political opponents during an election year based on a novel legal theory where the underlying alleged crime was never clearly explained and might not even make sense. Yet 12 members of a jury that are walking out of a trial with potentially 12 different opposing ideas about what the crime was, and they just convicted a former president of committing them. Trials like this are what define the third world. Alvin Bragg ran for office on the platform of going after Trump, and he managed to come up with this Frankenstein fake crime, the sole purpose of fulfilling that campaign promise. And if someone like this lady doesn't believe that the Biden DOJ had anything to do with the case, why was Matthew Colangelo, this guy that J.D. Vance mentions in this video, this third-ranking member of the Biden DOJ, you're going to try to tell me that he left that job in 2022 to work as a senior counsel with Alvin Bragg in a Manhattan DA office? He was the number 3 guy in the DOJ. This guy just decided to take a massive demotion to work in a smaller local prosecutor's office? Why would anybody do that? He must just be that impartial about enforcing bookkeeping laws in Manhattan. That whole thing was a joke, and people like her on the left just can't admit it. Hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please smash that thumbs up button, consider subscribing to the channel, help it grow, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace out, everybody.
Playtime is over. Burger. We got burgers now. Burger. Hurry, go and get one. Burger.
This is a good burger.
Burger.
Okay, seriously, this is so good.
Arby's did it right. Upping the burger game. Arby's, we have the meats.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today with an update on the condition of
San Francisco, a city whose fate has been largely shaped by several politicians of prominence here in Washington, D.C. Foremost among them, Vice President Kamala Harris and Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. I think it's important for all Americans to understand the tragedy of San Francisco, what has happened to one of America's most beautiful cities. Because the same radical failed policies that have caused San Francisco's decline and collapse are gaining increasing traction in Washington, D.C. So I want to go over just a few of the reasons why it is that, as the San Francisco Chronicle put it last year, this city is, quote, on the verge of collapse. Indeed, in many ways, my entire state of California offers a preview of where our country has been headed. But San Francisco offers an even starker warning. It is the part of our state where failed policies, radical politics, and public corruption are in their most advanced stage, and where residents are most rapidly fleeing. In an article headlined, "San Francisco Falls into the Abyss," UCLA economics professor Lee Ohanian writes, quote, "No major American city has failed at the same level as Detroit, whose population dropped from 1.85 million people in 1950 to about 630,000 today. Move over Detroit," he writes. "Here comes San Francisco, which lost 6.3% of its population between 2019 and 2021, a rate of decline larger than any two-year period in Detroit's history and unprecedented among any major U.S. city. The city is declining faster than any major U.S. city in the history of our country. And the reasons are not a mystery. Foremost among them are crime, drug addiction, homelessness, waste, unaffordability, failing schools, all a result of failed governance. So let's just start with the crime situation in San Francisco, which is a city that has had a progression of self-described progressive prosecutors, starting with now Vice President Harris, who has used that term to describe herself, progressive prosecutor, followed by others in her mold, George Gascon, and then Chesa Boudin, who was ultimately recalled from office by voters. Now, on a state level, California law has essentially legalized many forms of crime, making theft of merchandise below $950 a misdemeanor, as well as the possession of even Class A drugs. In practice, this means that offenders are rarely, if ever, prosecuted, and in many cases, businesses have stopped even reporting lawsuits. San Francisco's anti-law enforcement policies have compounded these problems. For example, a few years ago, in 2020, San Francisco defunded the police, shifting $120 million away from law enforcement. If you park your car while in the city, the advice is just to leave the doors open and make sure there are no valuables inside. That will at least spare you the cost of replacing your windshield. Last year, the Castro Merchants Association, representing 125 business owners, wrote a scathing letter regarding the city's failure to address the lawlessness around them. One said, "We're just seeing constant vandalism, constant drug use in public, people passed out on the sidewalk, people having psychotic breakdowns, and it's just not something a small business owner should have to deal with." On top of these general problems relating to crime, retail theft, car thefts, is the issue of drug use. Walking through San Francisco, you will see open drug use and drug dealing, with an open-air drug market scene that is so rampant that even last year, Governor Gavin Newsom sent in the National Guard, ostensibly to get it under control. While California has among the highest rates of illegal drug use in the country, San Francisco is well above the national average, with 22% of the population in the San Francisco, Oakland, Fremont area using an illegal drug in the last year. Tragically, the number of overdose deaths has skyrocketed from 222 to now 647 in a given year. Things only got worse during the COVID shutdowns as far more people in the city died from overdoses than from COVID. Facing among the most punishing lockdowns in the country, emergency room mental health visits increased substantially, especially for young people.
Well, let's see here,
It
bros.
certainly doesn't help matters that the supply of drugs is so abundant thanks to the crisis at our border, largely overseen by this administration's border czar, Vice President Kamala Harris. And it should be noted that San Francisco declared itself a sanctuary city long before California became a sanctuary state. On that note, the current vice president also played a starring role when she was district attorney, abiding by the city's sanctuary policies. And then when she was the state's attorney general, she actually paved the way for California to become a sanctuary state by opposing a federal law meant to stop sanctuary jurisdictions. A third issue that one will confront immediately in San Francisco is homelessness, and this is very much connected to the crisis of crime, drug use, and mental health, the explosion of homelessness in San Francisco. Once again, while California leads the nation in homelessness, San Francisco is worst of all. Between 2005 and 2020, the number of homeless increased from 5,404 to 8,124. During that same period, homelessness declined significantly nationwide. Within a 3-year span, complaints and homeless encampments to the city's 311 line increased from 2 to 62 each and every day. Meanwhile, the share of the homeless population that is unsheltered has also gone up in recent years. Fourthly is the waste situation. Between 2014 and 2018 in San Francisco, calls about human feces doubled to 20,933. $100 million was spent on street cleaning in 2019 alone. In a 3-year span, the city replaced 300 lampposts corroded by urine. The overall condition of many areas is something that no American
Those fake ads really drive you mad, huh? The game looks so fun in the ads, but when you...
Yeah, I got a new show for y'all. Had a damn good show. These are pics that Kamala Harris did not want black voters to see.
Oh, shit. Go let them have this
Her
one.
mom, her family. She don't have a 40 in her hand. She's not smoking a blunt. She ain't got no Timberlands on. And she ain't sagging her pants around her ankles. Hey, keep that picture up. Like she's actually wearing Indian garb. She's even got the dot on her forehead. Hey, according to Democrats, she black. That's a black woman. I'm telling you. That's a black African family right there. Hey, is that a dude with the hair on his chest? I thought that was a woman. That's a dude right there. Is that a dude who's got a receding hairline, Kevin? Well, I thought it was a woman for a second because he's got narrow shoulders. Let's go to the next picture. Hey, that's an African-American family. That's her with her Jewish white husband and his 2 kids. It's funny how she's never had kids. Huh. That I know of. I couldn't find anything. That's kind of weird. Yeah. Wonder why she didn't have kids. Maybe this marriage is not as... Hey. That's a conspiracy theory. He is a Jew. Y'all know that, right? Hey, let's go to the next picture. Hey, that's the... Hey, this is her dad. Are y'all starting to connect the dots? Yeah, this is her dad. Hey, look, do black people look like this? Yeah. On my side of the family, my dad's side of the family, bunch of watered down half Negroes. That's why I look the way I look, because I'm not 100% black. Yeah. This dude, okay, does he have black in him? Yeah. Okay, probably, but not much. He's biracial. Hey, there's some speculation that her father, he's got some lineage. He's actually a descendant of slavery. I mean, that owned slaves. Oh, really? Yeah. I went to PolitiFact, and PolitiFact could not deny or confirm that any of it was true or if it's not true. But they marked it as false until they... No, they didn't mark it as anything. He said when they get all the facts, they update the... which pretty much saying that he's more likely she owned slaves to her family. On her dad's side, yeah. Hey, bring up her dad again. The next picture of her dad. Yeah. Okay, this is her dad. Look at his hair. He's just laying down. That ain't curls or nothing. It's like his eyebrows, just laying down. Black people's hair don't look like that. Well, if you need proof, I can take my hat off and turn around. Back here, that nappy is hell. Hey, bring back up the picture of Dad. The hair just laying down. He got that good hair. He got that good hair. No, he's got the good hair. Good hair falls out. Yeah. Hey, let's go to the next picture. See Obama. He's biracial. Yeah. So that hair just laying down. The hair just laying down. He ain't trying to fade that or nothing. He lays down. He ain't wearing a wave cap. Wave one. He just fine just the way it is. He just lay it down. Look, I ain't got to put nothing in this. I just wake up and go.
And secure the carrier's retreat to the base.
Yeah, they claim he's the first black president. Yeah, he's biracial. He's not black, he's biracial. Yeah. I mean, that's just, when you say he's black, that's missing a lot of context. And it should be fact checked. He's not the first black president. He's the first person of color to be president, but to call him to say he's black? Yeah. After all that work his grandparents put in, his white grandparents put in and raising that boy? Yeah. And his mama had to do? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And you're just going to say he's first black president when his black father took off. Hey, I want to get back to Kamala's family. Like, Kamala and her father are not close. They're estranged. Yeah. And it's like, if that's her black side of the family, supposedly. Yeah. Why are they not on the campaign trail together? Why is he not standing up and expressing his blackness? There's some animosity between them two. No, but I think they want to keep that hidden. Yeah. I don't think he's really. Probably got black in him, but I don't think it's much. From what I heard on the internet, just speculation. When she went on the Breakfast Club and only claimed her black side because she smokes weed, it offended her dad a lot because he's Jamaican. And he said, you associating Jamaicans with just a bunch of weed, bunch of pot smokers. That's the only time you bring me up is when you said because you smoke weed. Yeah. That really offended her dad. Her father works at Stanford. Yeah. This ain't your typical run-of-the-mill. Yeah. And her father, from what I was reading in that PolitiFact check, yeah, he don't agree with identity politics. That's why they're so estranged and they're not on the same. I would love to see an interview, get an interview of him. Yeah. I'm gonna pull a Trump. Now Trump said Obama wasn't don't not do that, man. Don't do it. I want to see the birth certificate. I want to see the birth certificate of this man. Why? He's Jamaican. He's an immigrant. No, but they claim he's black. I mean, I never really understood, like, when I told other black people I was black, sometimes it pissed them off. It's like, you ain't black, man. You're like biracial. Yeah. I was like, both my parents are black. I said, well, both of them was biracial. You know? It's both our parents. It's like, yeah. I would think Democrats would stop wanting watered down Negroes. You know? Oh, they good enough. Oh, y'all need to get the real full-fledged Negro running the country. The left or the right don't want that. You don't think so? No.
Y'all have the odd strands, bros.
Because black people's track record. I said it out loud. I shouldn't have said it, but I said it. Shouldn't have said it. Excellent. Key. This country's come a long way. Look, the only time they say they first black president, it's Obama. He's raised by great white people. So what you saying? If Martin Luther King was alive today and he was running as a conservative, you wouldn't be the. You don't think he'd get the nomination? He probably would, because he actually stood for something. That's not if Charlie Kirk is around. So that dude's a mark. Not if Charlie Kirk's around. You see what Charlie Kirk said about Martin Luther King? Yeah, there's a two-time and socialist. Yeah. Well, he ain't saying those words. You'd be surprised the stuff they bring up on you when you're black. Even if your name is Martin Luther King. Hey, man, where we going with this? We talking about that Kamala. Yeah, she ain't black, I'm telling you. Yeah, look. Why we talking about Dr. Martin Luther King? We gotta cut all that out. No, we don't. This is good. This is real. We need to stay on topic. No, we on topic. Let me get to the topic. Shut your mouth. Like, well, let me go back to what I was saying. Hey, Kim, hold up. I was going to say something. Let me say it. Like, are there black people that look like Kamala? Some of the black people do look like Kamala. On my daddy's side of the family, all them blue, green-eyed Negroes walk around white in the face, got hair just laying down. But that's not black, that's biracial. That's what I'm saying, they're biracial. So my question is for you black people. Why y'all accepting these watered down Negroes? Don't y'all get tired of passing people off as black when they're not black? Kamala is not black at all. The only time she's black is when she's on the Breakfast Club. Or when she's talking to Taraji P. Henson. That's the only time she's black. Seriously. White guy. What's that vernacular they say in the black community? Not all kinfolk. It's not kinfolk. Yeah. Why y'all say that about black conservatives, but you don't say it for a woman who made a career in locking up black folks? Well, she's a Democrat. They give her a pass. Yeah, but that's the stupidity of people of color on this. Yeah. Y'all saying that this country is systemically racist. And to a certain extent, I agree. I don't think it has anything to do with race. I just think the system is out to hold a certain demographic of people doing certain things down doing. What, criminals? And exploits black people, right? Well, no, it's not. Systemic racism doesn't exist. But there is a system.
Given that you
Charlie Kirk, since he mentioned
exacerbating climate change, shouldn't you agree that we ought to transition? Given that you believe human beings are exacerbating climate change, shouldn't you agree that we ought to transition away from fossil fuels?
Well, no, I don't agree with that. My contention is I don't know. I do believe global temperatures are rising. I'm not willing to say definitively it's anthropogenic, meaning it's human activity. But if you connect the two, I asked the question I asked earlier, how much? Are there any other contributing factors to rising global temperatures other than human activity? If so, what are they, and to what degree do they factor into rising global temperatures? But sure, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I was wondering, how can you not know whether climate change is happening when a recent survey of 88,125 climate-related studies done by Institute of Physics cites that more than 99.9% of peer-reviewed scientific papers agree that climate change is caused by human activity.
How much? So how much of the global temperature rising is because of human activity? No. What percentage? Is it 70%, 80%, 85%, 5%, 1%? Because that's not what the study said. They're saying that human activity is contributing to part of the increase. What part? They don't know. That's debated.
Can I answer that?
Sure.
So, like, there's actually a statistics or a study done that suggests that climate-related disasters are 8 times more likely than in 1980s.
Well, hold on a second. You know that we have less people dying because of quote-unquote climate-related disasters thanks to fossil fuels. We have less people dying because of extreme exposure to cold, hurricanes, because of the advancements we have thanks to fossil fuels. You know, this idea, it's very interesting in modern society. We take for granted the idea of having widespread shelter, heating, or air conditioning in extreme climates thanks to hydrocarbons. We take for granted. That used to be a leading cause of death of human beings up until 1850s. Now, if I posit your contention, climate-related catastrophes, even though, according to peer-reviewed studies, that climate-related catastrophe death is actually at all-time low, the question is then for you, which is, what would you get rid of, when, and what would the cost of that be? That is the question, so please answer that.
All right, brothers, I'm going to turn my AC on. It's going to warm in here.
Obviously, I can't give you like exact percentage of numbers, but I do think that we ought to transition away from fossil fuel, right? Like, I'm not against growth or development. I obviously agree with you that, you know, the Industrial Revolution, like, economic growth is good. It's lifting people out of poverty. That's obviously good, right? But in developed countries today, where we have the ability to not damage our economy, but also benefit the environment, shouldn't we do that?
Okay, so give me an example. What specifically would you ban? You're king for a day. What would you ban? Would you ban liquid natural gas? Would you ban nuclear? Would you ban fracking? Would you ban... What kind of hydrocarbons would you ban? Give me the examples, and you're king for a day. What would you do?
Well, see, I wouldn't like straight up ban something, right? So I'm not advocating for, like, you know, just like fossil fuels. We end fossil fuels like immediately.
That's a mature answer. Good for you. No, I mean that. That's because the radicals don't always say that. Please continue.
Right. So I'll argue for like market-based solutions, a transition away, like for example, I think in 2020, like the government funded $5.9 trillion to fossil fuel companies. I would say that instead of investing this money, $5.9 trillion to fossil fuel companies.
That doesn't sound right. But you might be in tax credits, maybe, or tax breaks. That doesn't sound right.
Subsidies.
No, that's 5.9 billion, probably not trillion. There's no way.
It's trillion.
Yeah, well, the federal budget was 3.8 trillion. So there's no way we spent more than our federal budget.
No.
But I'm going to help you out. It's probably billion. Did you say trillion or billion?
It's trillion. It's done by the International Monetary Fund, and probably it's not.
It's not possible. I mean, I'm sorry
I'm not saying just in the United States.
Oh, okay, worldwide. All right, then that might be conceivable.
Right.
Sure.
So I mean, yeah. But anyways, so I would say instead of subsidizing these fossil fuels companies, I would say that take these subsidies to renewables and other forms of cleaner energy that would be beneficial to the environment while still pertaining economic
Fair enough. Last question. So where do we get the cobalt to make the batteries, and what do we do with them? No, I'm asking. Where do you recommend we get the cobalt to make the batteries?
Wait, can I answer? So, like, your argument is about this mining argument, right? Like,
no, I'm asking a question, dude. Like, where do we get it from? Yeah. So then, how about this? How and where should we dispose of the incredibly acidic, sometimes radioactive batteries that electric vehicles use? Where should we dispose of them?
But that argument, you see, it's a straw man because you're
Answer the question.
No, I am answering questions. I am literally answering your questions, right? So you're arguing about this renewable energies and their batteries and how they cause environmental harm, right?
I've asked a question. I'm not making an argument. What should we do with the batteries once we use them?
I'm saying that's a straw man because you can't.
Straw man question. That's a first. I've never been accused of a straw man question.
Because you have an underlying premise in your question that renewable energies exist in a vacuum, but you can't do that. That's not comparative analysis. You have to compare renewables with fossil fuels, with fracking and stuff.
Right. All right, pal. How about this? You can't answer the question because deep down you know that cobalt-powered batteries are worse for the environment than liquid and natural gas and nuclear power. So you come up on here to try to virtue signal, I love the environment, but as soon as you ask me about the incredibly environmentally inefficient, destructive, animal-killing, acidic-producing batteries, you're a strong man. You're out of time. Thanks for being here tonight. Next question.
Hey, Charlie. Hey, Charlie.
How you doing? Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. Hit the bell. Subscribe. We have new content coming out daily. Make sure you subscribe.
Was it really God's wish to kill Abraham's elder son? Why Isaac needed to be punished by...
Oh, it's not that I don't agree with, you know, what you just said, but...
I like Charlie Kirk, I really do, and he's not a college graduate. Kirk ain't. He reads into what he's talking about, bro. He truly... You don't gotta be Harvard educated to realize stuff, man. That's his point, you know.
Okay, y'all can laugh, but until you have walked as a black person on this campus, y'all truly don't understand.
What's up, YouTube? Hope you guys are feeling good. Today, guys, we're back into a new video. Today, we're gonna be checking out: should we judge people by the color of the skin? Okay, this is by Charlie Cook. I'm going to kick because of kicking us. Let's check this video out together.
Hi, my name is Erin. I'm a student here, and I'm an African American Studies major. But one thing I do agree with that you haven't said tonight is the school choice thing. I do agree that you should be able to go to a school that's outside of your zip code. I went to a great high school. That's exactly why I was able to come here. But my other question is that what are some examples of critical race theory? Because I know
I don't believe in critical race theories.
Another girl came. She said that.
I'm sorry, I don't. I think we all matter, all of us, regardless. And the white man doesn't put no more on the black and Asians, or that's vice versa. In my honest opinion of it.
Caucasian people, and I had to learn how to interact with other people. So is it something like that, or is it something deeper that we don't really know?
No, it's super simple. So let me just kind of ask you. I bet we agree. Do you support black-only dormitories?
Well, when I think of black-only dormitories, I believe that you're talking about like maybe HBCUs because it's mostly black people.
No.
Where are these?
Western Washington University, public school in Washington, has black-only dormitories. Is that something you would support?
I mean, I would probably live in one, but I mean,
Wait, so you don't want to live with white people?
I didn't say, I mean, I didn't say that. But, I mean, it's kind of hard. Sometimes, like, I have a lot of white friends or whatever, but sometimes, I mean, it's hard to fit in here when you go here and you're a different color. I mean, it's not hard to...
What would you support white-only dormitories?
It's some around here. Not many black people go here, so it technically is white only if you think about it.
No, it's not. No,
I mean,
let me ask you another question.
I don't think anybody here would. Oh, well, some people might, support that. I mean, I never said I supported any only kind of thing.
That's why I'm asking, right? I think that
Do you support white only dormitories?
Absolutely not. I think it would be racist.
It's preposterous. I believe that.
And guess what? Black only dormitories are racist too.
I mean, I guess so. I might live in one if I could, but I can't. So.
Okay. Well, let me ask you another question. At Columbia University, they have black-only graduation ceremonies. Would you support that?
I mean, is it just like, so are they not able to graduate with the white people? Is that why they can't?
Well, they have a separate ceremony just for black people.
Oh. I mean, I guess it's kind of like the separate ceremony when they don't want to go to graduation. They want to do it online. That's how I think.
So do you think segregation is evil and wrong?
I mean, black people weren't even able to join sororities here until 2012. So, not the PhD one. So, segregation here. George Wallace stood in front of the doors.
I just know that's not true, and like, there's.
Okay, when were PhD sororities and fraternities desegregated? 2013. Oh,
so you're trying to tell me that black people were not able to join a fraternity because of the color of their skin?
Do you remember George Wallace too? Segregation now, segregation, for all, forever.
That
happened as well.
That's what you're espousing when you say that black-only graduation ceremonies or dormitories.
Black-only graduation ceremonies are the least of our problems, least of yours. Do you think that you'll be able to go to a HBCU and have this same turnout and have these same people?
Back in 2022, I lost two very important people in my life. Big figures. It really wasn't until
feed herself if I just left her in the crib.
That's not ownership over your own body, though. The ability to move your body by instinct even is ownership over you.
Okay, so a 22-week-old baby in the womb moves all the time. You're contradicting yourself. You have to have a line. At 15 weeks, 6 weeks, there's a heartbeat.
I guess I would say that, okay, so that was a good point.
Thank you.
What's up YouTube? Hope you guys are feeling good. Today guys, we're back here into a new video. Today we're gonna check out Charlie Cook. I call him Charlie Kick because I love kicking ass. Charlie Cook debates college students at University of Texas. There's a full video. I would love you guys check this video out to me. You know how it is guys, stop less right on yes more. Let's get into today's video.
Howdy Charlie, thank you for coming. All of us are so excited that you're here, finally. So before I ask my question, I just gotta say this. We need you to come to Texas A&M University. I know that we're here at UT, but I'm not the only person that thinks that. Okay, so I don't remember if it was at SAS 2022 or at American Fest, but I remember you saying that UT Austin is the most leftist university you have ever visited. It's been a few years since you've been, so, and I mean, you can elaborate on this. Does that still prove true? I know you said UC Berkeley,
well,
so.
Okay, so last time I was here, that was something, I gotta tell you. We had a cameraman get assaulted and it was all sorts of crazy stuff. 4 years ago. So I don't think this campus has gotten more conservative. But I think other campuses have gotten more liberal. So by process of elimination, you're no longer the most liberal school I visited. So I guess you'll take it, right? So, no, but I will say this, though. I will see this administration coming in and allowing our dialogue to happen, hosting the event, campus police. That's very good. I don't get that at every school. I got to tell you, we got to fight for every single inch, and so that's good. I appreciate it. But I said this kind of out in the open when I was there. There is a lot of work to do here because some of the postmodern pablum that I was hearing has very, very serious implications. So the question, I guess, is also liberal versus leftist, right? Liberal, I'm fine with. Okay. Liberals like free speech, live and let live. Okay, fine, I'm not a liberal. Leftists really bother me. Leftists are the few people, not a lot, who came up today and they said, you don't have a right to be here, we want to kick you off campus. Okay. Leftists bother me, they're totalitarians, and they just bother me too. Instead of having debate or dialogue, they resort to force, or they try to intimidate you with, threats or so between liberals and leftists. And I hope UT at least remains liberal and never becomes leftist. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Charlie.
Hi, Charlie. I just want to open up by saying I am a leftist, and I understand your perspective on
Thanks
this.
for being here.
But I just want to hear you out today and, ask a question. So, you said that you believe that quarantine is the cause of our generation's, drop, essentially. And I believe that it is actually war. Like, we were born fresh out of 9/11, some of us around the time of 9/11. And I don't my father served in Afghanistan, so I don't have a very keen perspective of the United States, but I did want to hear you out on what you had to say. And I do believe we have some common ground in the fact that capitalism has failed my generation more than any other.
Yeah, I didn't quite say that, but I would say lack of free enterprise in some ways, but that's okay. You got most of it. So, so the lockdowns, not quarantine, right? That was the word I used. But I mean, I'll prove it to you. So the war thing aside, I mean, how many people in this room know someone that committed suicide or seriously harmed themselves in the midst of the pandemic? Just by a show of hands. That's a lot. I mean, the number says suicide visits were 50% higher among 12 to 17-year-olds during the same period in 2018. Psychiatric medication prescription went up, alcoholism went up, drug use went up, not to mention young people then re-entered an economy where everything was twice as expensive because we created a bunch of money because of the lack of productivity and the lockdowns. And so I think it's just inarguable that the lockdowns played a huge role, a massive role, in really depriving a generation of the ability to congregate and to communicate.
Can I say my perspective?
Yeah, sure.
This is kind of personal, but I was considering taking my own life before quarantine, and I think discovering myself during quarantine is what saved myself. I had quite the opposite experience. I know that is unique in that case, but I would say that it's the opposite. I would say it's the opposite. But that's I think there are far more worse things that my generation has been exposed to than the lockdown and the inflation that you have cited during the lockdown. That's arguably not the fault of the current standing president, if you do believe that it is.
That's arguably is the fault.
Biden created $5 trillion new dollars, not created, but he approved $5 trillion new dollars that was hyperinflationary. But I'll even give you that. The other COVID relief funds never should have been approved. But look, it's not just the suicide issue. But first of all, thank you. We're glad you're here. We're glad you didn't make that decision. Life is beautiful, worthy of perfection. I mean that. And
the killing yourself, bro, is never an option, dudes. You feel that way, bros. There's plenty of places can help you. I'm stage 4 cancer survivor. Surviving. I'm not survived it, but I'm stage 4, and even at my mind state, it's not an option, dudes. I mean, it's not an option.
Poor families.
Honestly, it's not, man. I don't consider it an option whatsoever.
To be able to keep up with this.
I honestly don't, bros.
Of American education.
You can't justify taking your life, dudes. Whatsoever.
And I mean, so you're an economic leftist. Is that fair to say? I mean, would you at least agree that one of your passionate causes, which is billionaires getting wealthier, billionaires got $600 billion wealthier?
Absolutely. And like your whole big tech sucks, is that what it says? I don't know what it says.
Yeah,
but
that's one of them.
I'm absolutely understand that. And I don't think enough conservatives understand that the left are equally against big business as they are.
Well, some leftists, right? I mean, it depends who you talk to.
The loud minority, I would say, are the ones that are make you get the impression that we're not against big business.
Yeah, and I'll just close with this. This is what drives me nuts about kind of the fixation on race all the time and all these other issues that I prefer not to talk about, is that I think there's actually agreement on kind of how things went wrong. You blame capitalism, I blame more cronyism and big government intervention over a lot of different things. But I'm afraid that a lot of what we spend our time talking about are some of the more superficial issues rooted in race Marxism.
I absolutely agree. Agree. So I believe that classism is the biggest issue in America.
Yeah, so let me ask you a question. As a leftist, why is it that the American left, why is the American left allowing the conversation to be controlled by white liberals that just want to stay rich?
it's big business paying them off. It's not.
That's an honest answer. You are a true revolutionary. So, God bless you, comrade. Thanks for being here tonight. So, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, man. If you disagree, come to the line. Whatever you guys want.
All right. So, abortion seems to be like a big topic these days, and I was actually earlier. I was listening in, and that's a big topic there too. And so I guess I just had a question about that because at the booth, like whenever someone was asking you like why are we valuing the fetus, it kept coming back to human life, and like I didn't really understand because when you say human life, like human life by definition is an organism or a being that has human DNA. And so when the fetus only really has that connection with, you know, like fully grown adults or they're still born children, what entitles the fetus to violate the property rights of the mother over her own body, or to have the government do so on her behalf?
Does that baby have unique DNA? So by your own definition, that should be worthy of protection, right?
No, I don't believe that DNA has moral value.
Oh, okay, got it. So when does human life begin?
Well, human life, I guess, if you say like an organism that is human species, by definition begins at conception.
Right, so then my position is that being that begins at conception is worthy of constitutional rights and protection.
Why? What moral value does simply having a human organism, even if it's just a single cell organism,
yeah,
that has human DNA, what moral value?
Right, because human beings are different. Human beings have the ability to have rational speech, to reason, not just consciousness, not just the ability to feel. Human beings are the only species that can not just feel pain and pleasure, but can tell the just from the unjust. Human beings are something that is so beautiful and so special, and of course I have many different reasons to believe this, but I'll make a natural law argument, that DNA will never exist again. It's distinct, and it is living. And if allowed uninterrupted growth, that human being will hopefully mature into something just like you have. We're all abortion survivors.
Has a point. Somebody has a point there.
Okay, so you mentioned the rationality that makes human beings special, but that single-celled organism doesn't have that rationality yet. And so what qualifies the entirety of the human species?
So my 7-week-old doesn't have a lot of rationality. My baby girl eats and does other things and sleeps. Obviously you would agree, it's that 7-week-old has value.
Yeah, but I'm not coming from an argument of rationality. I'd come from more of like a self-ownership type perspective. And I simply don't believe that an organism that is inherently dependent on violating another person's property rights in order to survive.
Right. So, my 7-week-old is very dependent on my wife and me. That doesn't mean I can just eliminate my 7-week-old. I'm sorry?
Obviously, the 7-week-old depends on, her practicality in living. But if we're talking about a moral perspective, right, just the capacity to have why does that give it moral value?
Okay, but we're talking about two different things. I guess the question is, do you believe just because something is dependent on another, is that a reason that you could be able to eliminate that being?
If that being has to violate someone else's moral rights in order to do so, yes.
Really? So what moral rights do you mean by that?
The right to have another actor is violating those rights, then yeah, to remove it, I don't see it.
Got it. So bodily autonomy would be more important than another being being able to live a place.
Yeah, I would value a being that has the right to property over one that doesn't have a right to property.
Got it. Just because the being is older and not in the womb and bigger.
And also because the being is a person and not just...
Okay, but if that being's 1 week old, it's more than a single cell organism.
Yeah, but that person, that 1 week old still has, autonomy over themselves, at least at 1 week old. Has an inherent,
Got it, okay. So this is where we have clarity but not agreement. Here's the problem, okay? Morality that built the West and the morality that I'm going to defend tonight is that 1 week old can't defend themselves, so stronger, bigger people not in the womb need to insert themselves to make sure that 1 week old is not terminated by people that are just happen to be older and bigger than them. Is that regardless of size, as soon as that life begins, which you agreed it starts at conception, that being deserves constitutional rights, uniquely and fearfully made. And it's the question of the morality of a society, what we're willing to do when that being comes into existence. Because human life is special. Human life is different than dolphins, it's different than chimpanzees. We not just have the ability to reason, and I'm going to make an argument you might not agree with. Yes, human beings have a soul. And a soul is worthy of protection. I would even go as far to say that human being is made in the image of the Creator. I don't expect you to agree with that. Final point.
Okay, so I guess I would just believe that the only types of, at least the only types of humans that can have moral rights are ones that act as moral agents, and a single-celled organism that's living in a womb, or a multicellular organism that's living in a womb.
Can you explain what you mean by moral agents?
Moral agency?
So if you don't have moral agency, then you could be up for elimination.
If you don't have, if you don't have moral agency, if you don't have the ability to if you don't have ownership over your own body yet.
Yeah. So that, by the way, that is babies until they're about 18 months old do not have ownership.
No,
True.
I would say that.
Okay. How would my 7-week-old feed herself if I just left her in the crib?
That's not ownership over your own body, though. The ability to move your body by instinct, even, is ownership over your own body.
Okay. So a 22-week-old baby in the womb moves all the time.
Yeah. It rotates.
You're contradicting yourself. You have to have a line. At 15 weeks, 6 weeks, there's a heartbeat.
I guess I would say that.
Aren't I just the worst?
Okay, so that was a good point.
Thank you. Thank you.
I guess I probably just need to clarify that what I mean by self-ownership or moral agency, because that organism or that human, whatever, in the womb is still inherent. In order to survive, it's inherently biologically dependent, even if it does nothing, right? It's biologically dependent on the mother. And so if we talk about late term, I guess I don't want to go into that territory just right? So if we say, if we just talk about early term abortion, I simply don't see, I don't have, and I don't think that generally people see a moral value that is similar to even that of a newborn baby in something that is just.
We have clarity. Thank you for your question, man. Appreciate it. Thank you.
My question to you is, are you a nationalist? And if you are, do you think nationalism leans more towards loving your people or loving the ideas of your country?
Under the proper description, yes, I am a nationalist. Under the proper descriptions, I think there's a lot of smearing, and you should always value people more.
Great.
Thank you.
That was the quickest answer here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I was purposely I'm a leftist, but I found common ground with you on abortion, and that I completely agree that, whatever you want to call it, a fetus at whatever stage it is, it's alive.
First person who's coming out.
There's no contention on that front. My concern, though, and I want to hear your perspective on this, is here in Texas we have the strictest abortion ban in the whole country. There's no exception for rape or incest, or for the life of the mother after 6 weeks. My concern is that the government is mandating that people carry out their pregnancies even when it goes against their own life and their own well-being. I can take an example of if somebody's threatening to harm you, you have a right to self-defense. Why not have give the same autonomy to people who are pregnant?
Okay, thoughtful question. Thank you. So, first thing is, if you believe abortion is wrong, which you admitted it is, well then you should obviously have laws that...
I'll clarify, I didn't admit that abortion is wrong.
Okay,
I said
yeah,
I
please
see it as
clarify.
a form of self-defense.
Okay, right, so that's a new one.
Well,
self-defense.
As the previous person says, that person inside of you is dependent on you in a way different than a natural born child.
So in most cases, rape and incest aside, how did that being get there?
I mean, in most cases, through sex, regardless of rape or incest.
Yeah, so there was a choice made.
I see your point. Even with a choice, let's say you invite someone into your home and they still decide to assault you. Does that mean you not have a right to self-defense against them?
Well, no, I think that, for example, if you have a bunch of teenagers over to your home and they start wrecking everything, you shouldn't be shocked when all of a sudden you wake up the next morning and things are a little awry.
But we're not just talking about wrecking a home. We're talking about wrecking your own body, your own personal.
Well, hold on. Again, rape and incest aside, of which I'm happy to answer and happy to talk about the moral aspect of that, but 98% of all abortions are done as a form of birth control. Right?
True.
It's a form of birth control. How did those people get pregnant?
Usually through consensual sex.
Right. So they are pro-choice. They made a choice to have consensual sex, and now they want to be able to use scientific medical technology to crush a being that is not them, is a different person out of convenience?
Let's say you have a child who needs a kidney transplant, and you are the only one who can supply it. And you consensually allow them to use that kidney.
How is it bringing
What if the
kidney into
operation
this?
goes too long? They're still kind of using your blood for months on end. Should the government mandate, maybe not kidney?
I love these hypotheticals. I got it. Not making
But
fun
you
of
see
you.
where
No,
you see where
earlier
I'm
I got
going.
the most amazing hypothetical. We don't have to overthink this. Like, why should children get the death penalty because their parents decided to have consensual sex? I don't understand.
Sir, even if you consent to, say, taking care of your child through the, transfusing blood or whatnot, should the government mandate that you have to continue that consensual blood transfusion?
Again, under the unrealistic hypothetical, and I reject the whole premise of this. The question is, let me answer it more broadly. Do I think the government should step in to protect and preserve human right, be it by mandating, especially when the question is termination or not? Of course, the answer is yes.
Yes.
But it says a lot when there's a very serious, concrete question, and kind of we have to yield to these abstractions, which is fine. Philosophical sides and the kind of the hypotheticals are fine, are legitimate, I suppose, in some sense. But it comes to be just more concrete, right? We've got 1 million abortions every single year. Okay, 998,000 of them are because of a form of birth control. You find something wrong with that?
Not necessarily.
Okay. I think there is something wrong with that. I think that just looking at the last resort to be able to terminate human life as a form of birth control is not just sick, it's immoral. And it says a lot about who we are as a people and kind of the folding of a cultural life in our nation. And so I'll just ask one final question. When does human life begin?
It begins at conception, but that doesn't override the right to bodily autonomy and self-protection.
Okay, so that's interesting. So it does begin at conception. So does that mean someone who is larger than another being has the right to terminate them? Because why is it bodily autonomy? Just because the being is in them?
The size doesn't matter. It's the self-defense. If
I know not to use that.
A knife at you, you can knock it down. It's you. I'm sorry. I'm kind of impromptu here as we keep going.
That's okay. Yeah. Well, so I'll just close with this. Don't use that analogy again.
Yeah. No, that was a bad one.
Thank you for being here tonight. Yeah. Thanks.
Hey, thank you so much for coming out here and for facing disagreements first, I guess. I really appreciate it. All right, I had another question coming up here, but the bait is there and I have to take it.
Okay.
So I am also pro-choice, and I was wondering how, you said to the previous dude back there that the government, in cases where human life is at risk, should step in through any means necessary, be it through mandates, be it through bans, things like that, right?
Again, that was a hypothetical answer. Let me clarify it. I think the government has a moral obligation to protect innocent life when confronted with the question of someone intervening to end that life.
All right.
So if a police officer is standing idly by and he sees someone on the side of the street and someone is going by about to kill them, the police officer, being an agent of the government, has a moral right to intervene.
I'm sorry, I do have to take a little bit of a caveat here. So the behavior of the police officers in the Uvalde shooting was disgusting.
Oh, I totally agree.
Do you believe? Okay,
yeah,
sweet.
But guess what? I'm consistent. The cowardice that happened at Uvalde is the cowardice we allow to happen when there's 1 million abortions in our country every single year.
All right, okay.
Which is
there's a point right
standing
there.
idly by when children unspeakably get massacred.
True.
I don't know. I think there's a bit of a difference, and the analogy that I usually use, or the question that I usually ask pro-life people, is, do you believe that the government should mandate organ donation, even in cases of things like donating your kidney, or right now we have a policy where even after death, if you have like religious things where you have to. No. Where your whole body has to be intact in order for like burial rites and things like that to happen. We say that you shouldn't have to donate your organs, but the pro-life case seems to extend to the idea that even people who are living should have to give up their kidneys to people in hospitals, maybe, who need kidneys.
Well, I don't quite see it that way.
Okay.
But
What makes a uterus different?
well, first of all, again, in 99.67% of the cases, the woman made a choice that could
And
potentially.
what about those 0.4%? What do you think should happen then?
Oh, I think the baby should be delivered, of course, because I'll give you an example. Let me just prove it to you. If I had 2 ultrasounds, and one of them was a baby conceived in rape, and one was a baby conceived in consensual sex.
Well, of course.
Which one is it?
I do.
But you can't tell because they're both human beings. And in Western morality, of which I'm defending tonight, doing something wrong after something evil is never the right thing.
So, do you
True.
think that government should mandate organ donation?
No, and I think it's a false equivalency. For more reasons than one, for a lot of different reasons. By the question of, do I think that the government should come in and protect innocent life from being slaughtered? Of course I do. Yes. And that's the answer. So, I mean, when it comes to mandating organ donations, I don't even see how that's applicable to the question. Because in 99.6% of the cases, 6-7% of the cases, the mother made a choice to be able to get pregnant. Now, in the very small micron kind of case, then the case is that the human life and the human being needs to exist.
So-
Needs to be able to exist.
All right, I'm gonna argue that different forms of birth control have like different forms of like effectiveness, and someone could be like potentially on birth control using those control methods, and it fails. Is that just a risk that like someone?
Yeah. So I'm going to say something. This is how far our morality has gone. We need to teach kids to save themselves for marriage. And
True.
a lot of these problems wouldn't be having. And if you do decide to engage in consensual marriage sex before marriage, and you get pregnant, that's the cost of the game.
All right. Okay.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Okay. He's actually my friend. I actually first heard of you through a Christian apologist I follow called Dr. Frank Turek.
He's special. He's great.
He's awesome.
He's a great friend.
My question concerns the hope and love we can have for America. I mean, we live in a country that has allowed for 63 million deaths through the abortion industry. And we have multiple industries and institutions that are built on lies and lust. And it seems as if the majority of American citizens either don't care or even approve of abortion. So where do you think we can go, the individual people, the church, and the government, to where can we go from having hope and love for our country at this point?
It's a very dark picture you painted. Congratulations. Do you have anything else you want to add to that? Well, first of all, I assume you're a Christian. And so, I mean, it's up to us Christians. There's 2 things Christians can't be: apathetic or cynical. I won't put up with it. You're secular, you can be apathetic and cynical. You're a Christian, I'm not going to put up with it. Because you know how the story ends, and you have a great hope, and you should always be working towards a great end. You should care about your nation, Jeremiah 29:7. Demand the welfare of the nation that you are in, because your welfare is tied to your nation's welfare. Daniel fasted and prayed for his nation. Nehemiah, Jeremiah, Esther, Mordecai, all cared about the welfare.
1 Timothy 2.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, pray for your leaders by name, because they're counselors to the king. And so, look, I think we have a lot of hope, and the hope is not in the institutions, it's not in the FBI, it's not in the DOJ, it's not in the CIA, it's not in Facebook, it's not in Google, it's not in Goldman Sachs. My hope is in the energy and the spirit and the optimism of you. I mean, what I get to see in the American people traveling the country, hosting a national radio show, hosting a podcast, I'm nothing but hopeful. The spirit in the grassroots of the American people right now, of all ages and backgrounds.
Okay.
Hi, I'm JT, and I made Result Hunter, the search engine for conservatives. Let me just tell you what it does. First of
Why are black people in jail at higher rates than white people?
That's the question, right? Maybe because they
Yes.
commit more crimes than white people.
But that's not true. I'm getting nowhere with y'all, and y'all are not answering my question, so I'm going to end this Q&A right here. Thank you for your time.
Well, that sure didn't go how she planned it.
Hi, y'all. So before I ask my question, I want to clarify a point that y'all mentioned earlier. You said you don't believe in white privilege, correct?
Yeah, it's a myth. It doesn't exist.
Okay, so according to the Bureau of Prison Statistics from last month, 38.3% of our current inmate population is black, but according to the 2020 census data, only 12.2% of our national population is black. So if you don't believe in white privilege, how do you explain this disparity?
So why are they in jail?
It has been this way for years, since the 90s.
No,
Since
why do people go to jail?
Why are black people in jail at higher rates than white people?
That's the question, right? Maybe because they
Yes.
commit more crimes than white people.
But that's not true.
It actually is.
They do. So every independent analysis shows that blacks have committed a disproportionate amount of crime. No one wants to say it out loud, but it's true. In fact, in New York, 52% of murders are committed by blacks, 40+% of arson, 60+% of drug deals. And so the question you should really be asking is what drives them to commit crimes? That's the question, right? The real question is, and maybe I can ask you, what percentage of blacks are raised with two parents in the home?
So actually, according to the Uniform Crime Report for 2019, black or African American individuals committed only about 1 million crimes, while white people committed about 4 million crimes.
But that's proportion.
Yeah, how about the proportion?
There's a lot more white people than black people in the United States.
It's a 60% white country and a 14% black country. So you just got my point. You literally, so basically that's a disproportionate amount of crime. It is.
But listen, I want to say, look, you are coming up here and you're asking the question, and that's not easy.
All right, bros. That's going to be it for me for this morning.